last year's last year's state fair had some controversy where some queer artists faced some restrictions. How does that crystallize what Artitude exists to fight against, or does it have an impact?
It did have an impact. So essentially, they wanted us to be there, but they didn't want us to identify as an LGBT organization. And so, as an LGBT organization, because I could not, in my conscience, be like, sure, we'll do that.
Welcome to Art in the Raw. I'm David Smith. You just heard Jerome Larez describe a moment that gets to the heart of what visibility really costs. The State Fair of Texas wanted Artitude's artists there. They wanted the work, the talent, the color on the walls. So they didn't want anyone to know these were LGBTQ artists. Jerome said no. He's the co-founder of Artitude, an organization that spent nearly a decade creating space for queer artists of color across Texas. Not just gallery space, safe space. Jerome grew up hearing the word maricon from his own family. It's a slur, the Spanish equivalent of faggot. So he took that word and he turned it into the name of Artitude's flagship exhibition, MariconX, a reclamation, a defiance, an invitation. In this conversation, we talk about what happens when you refuse to hide who you are, even when it costs you opportunities. We talk about a performer who felt safe enough at one of Jerome's events to come out as bisexual in front of a room full of strangers. And we talk about why, in a political climate that's trying to erase funding and recognition for marginalized artists, the most important thing you can do is keep creating. This is Jerome Larez. Let's go.
Jerome Larez, welcome to Art in the Raw. Thank you for joining me. I feel so privileged to have you here.
Oh, no, thank you. I feel privileged.
I appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about I want to talk about your organization Artitude, but let's dive in first a little bit on your own artistic journey as an artist. What got you
Okay.
started into art?
My mom's side of the family, they're very artistic. They're musicians.
Mm-hmm.
They play instruments and they sing. I was raised Catholic, but that's kind of my story. But my grandparents, they sang in the church, things like that. And so I got involved musically that way. And then when I um, entered middle school, I joined band, did all of those things. So I was a brass player, I played trumpet,
Mm-hmm.
was pretty good. Went on to high school, continued with band, and then joined choir. So I was pretty much in the performing arts. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until I attended college when I was just taking courses, elective courses, where I began to look at other things. And at that time, I probably had like 5, 6 different majors. So I wasn't really sure like what I wanted to do, but I do have a big background in philosophy. So as I was taking courses, I took a visual arts course, a design course, and I really loved it. It helped me relax, but I was learning a new skill, and I just kind of continued until my advisor said, "Well, you can no longer take any more courses because if you take other courses, these are for art majors. They're not elective courses."
Mm-hmm.
And so I changed my major to art, and I just continued that journey. And when I took my first black and white photography class, that is what clicked in the visual art side,
Same.
where I could manipulate what I wanted in the camera, but I also learned how to develop and, my own develop my film, develop my photos, and then larger, all those things where I was really, really good and very skilled at that. But in the art making as well, I was really good at as well. And so that's kind of what changed. That's kind of my journey. And then once I got through all of, the technical things and learning things, I began to be very self-reflective in my own artwork and started making my art about me. And in the 90s, um, you know, focusing on myself, especially my gay part of myself, where I kind of didn't really think about it much
Mm-hmm.
growing up in a small town, I began to explore that, and it became very therapeutic in some ways of kind of beginning to explore Jerome, the gay side of Jerome, and talking about it and looking at it through other people's lenses, through critiques and so forth. So, but that's kind of my little journey, and then I kind of continued on. But initially, my goal was to always start an organization like Artitude. Yes.
So let's talk about Artitude a little bit. Take me back to the the Starbucks meeting in 2014 with Rafik.
Mhm.
What was happening in your life that made you realize that queer the queer and art communities needed something different?
So the way that we met, we were supposed there were initially three of us. It was me, Rafik, and a fashion designer. We were supposed to do an event.
Hmm.
But the event didn't happen. My conversations with Rafik about representation and artists and LGBT artists in Dallas, we kind of continued that conversation and we just began talking about it. And then, but it also, I was also having conversations with his husband, Cannon Flowers. And so we would all three meet regularly and we would just talk about the art. We'll talk about what's going on in Dallas. And so essentially, through that conversation, it turned into, oh, let's do something about everything that we're talking about. Let's make sure that Latino artists have opportunities and representation. Let's make sure Asian artists, because Rafik is Singaporean, so
Hmm.
he wanted to make sure there was some, he had representation, Asian representation. And so as we were talking, we realized that there are other marginalized communities within our community, our LGBT community. And
Yeah.
so we wanted to focus on those areas. And so when you look at Artitude, we have Latino representation, we have representation for our African American communities, and we just kind of mix it all up. And so, which brings us kind of into today. We are creating programming for 2026, which is our 10th anniversary year, which we are looking at cross-cultural programming, meaning that, like for example, our MariconX, which is for our Latinx artists, now we're looking at bringing multiple cultures into single programming, which we've done already with our Out Loud, because we have different artists from different backgrounds, and also our Friends recital that we had last year that we're moving into opera this year, our Voices Beyond Boundaries, which that had multiple people from different backgrounds as well. But we want to now be more intentional, did I say that right? Yes, intentional,
Intentional.
how we are bringing different artists from different backgrounds and how we are creating that program that way.
How do you go about defining the multicultural aspect of this new program? How do you set the boundaries around the different cultures that will be represented, or do you?
Okay, so just quick conversation I had with my program director. So one of the programs that we are thinking about doing is we always wanted to do a fashion show about Day of the Dead.
Hmm.
And so I have a friend who is a fashion designer who was inspired to do his work of a traumatic experience with his brother who was murdered. Beautiful work. And he is a Black artist. So we want to speak with him, because we haven't had this conversation yet. So if he hears this, he knows I'm talking about him. What we want him to do is think about his experiences that he's had and look at it through the lens of Day of the Dead, which is primarily a Mexican tradition of
Uh-huh.
how we honor our loved ones, how we remember our loved ones, and look at it through that lens. And when I see it, I am seeing he is looking at, he's looking at ours through his lens as a Black artist. And so there is that crossover of cultures that is happening. He is interpreting Day of the Dead through his
Through a black
own art. Yes,
perspective.
yeah. So we're kind of looking at those different events that will do that will bring out some curiosities with people. But at the same time, I'm very, very interested in knowing how this artist will interpret all of this and
Yeah,
how all that will come out. So
that
how
could be
the
very
two I
fascinating.
how the two ideas will marry each other and have those
Yeah, it's like taking a new look on an old friend and
mhm,
seeing things about it that maybe you never noticed before. That could be
right.
very cool. So, in your daily life, you're juggling roles as cultural
Mhm.
affairs commissioner, public arts commissioner, and Juanita Craft, home. How do all those threads weave together in your vision for what art can do?
It is really about bringing other marginalized groups together, communities, and creating a space that is equitable for everyone and access. I think that is very important in the work that Artitude does, but also in the work that I think we should be having those conversations about, equity and access, and who has access, and who has these conversations, who are in these rooms having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's very important. I think that's where that multiculturalism comes in as well, or that cross multiculturalism comes in as well, is like we should be inviting as many people to these conversations as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I do in the city of Dallas, I think that is what I strive to do, is to make sure that our marginalized communities have a voice in the city. I build artistic programs and initiatives through Artitude, but also through the Juanita Craft Civil Rights House that we do. I help with conversations doing that through the city of Dallas as commissioner. So also what our exhibits do, we foster community through our events and our exhibitions. Our MariconX it's our flagship program, but we are in our 8th year of doing that. And the community that we have been able to build with that MariconX program has been phenomenal. The community that supports us, the artists that support us, it's a really good thing to see that we have a community that really does come together, and we're able to say that, and we're able to explore that through the art that the different artists bring. And again, cultivating accessibility and inclusivity. And we encourage our artists, our people who follow Artitude, to support as well these wonderful artists.
Yeah. How does your work with previous nonprofits that you've worked with and your experience in the city of Dallas, what does that teach you about what you wanted to do differently with Artitude?
So it's a really good question. When I first came to Dallas, I knew nothing about Dallas. I moved here September of 2012. So it took me a little while. It was 2016 when Rafik and I started to have these conversations about Artitude, or 2014, 2015. And at that time, which is, obviously I'm not the person I am today, but I was really, really shy. I didn't talk very much. And so I'm always a person who observes things. So initially, I didn't have conversations with other organizations, but I did go to art shows. I did do artistic things in different venues and places. So I was able to see what different organizations were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the board makeup, looking at all these different things, with Artitude, Rafik and I wanted to create that safe space. We wanted to create that space where everyone felt that they had a place, or everyone felt they could resonate with the art or the artist or the people that are there. And I think that is what is really unique about Artitude, is that we do that. When you go to one of our exhibitions, it is about community. It is about talking about what our community is involved with through the themes that we choose. Like, for example, this year, our MariconX show was about it's the Pueblo Unido, the people united. Because obviously, for political reasons, we wanted to look into that theme to see how our artists are interpreting the current situation that we're political situation that we're in. This year, our Voices Beyond Boundaries. It was an amazing experience, giving the stage to our trans artists through music that was written by trans composers.
Mm-hmm.
To give them a voice to be on the stage, to give us their experience, to talk about their artistry, and for our artists to talk about their journey as trans artists and where they came from to where they are now. So I think that journey of that artistic journey that each of us take, I think is all very important. And when they come together, for an exhibition or for a recital, it's all very powerful. And to
Powerful
let
and
people
beautiful.
Yes. And I think that is what Artitude carries, and that is what you see in our program.
So you mentioned at the top of the podcast with that first meeting with Rafik and thinking about doing Artitude that there were there were gaps in the art world here in Dallas that you felt like needed to be addressed. What did you see in the Dallas, especially the Dallas LGBTQ plus arts landscape that you felt needed urgent attention?
Let me start by saying this: we still need urgent attention in these areas. Though it is improved, though it has gotten better, it still needs urgent attention to it. But let me also start with this as well. I'm not sure the city of Dallas has removed its DEI policies, and right now the Office of Arts and Culture is figuring out language and how to adapt to that. And so um, it's going to affect Latino, Black, Asian, marginalized LGBT artists, the funding. We're already in a city that we don't see a lot of funding for marginalized artists. We don't see a lot of funding for LGBT artists. And so with the city removing its DEI, this is most likely a probability that will happen. I say probability because it hasn't happened yet, but we're more than likely going to see it happen.
So there's even a more urgent need now than there was when you formed Artitude.
That's correct. Because at that time, at least Dallas had some DEI policies, and then in 2016, 2018, I forget, they drafted and they approved the new cultural plan. So now we don't even know where that is at that point, because it does talk about cultural plan does talk about um, bringing in more marginalized artists, LGBT, Black, Brown artists, but there is also a section in the cultural plan that talks about housing, affordable housing for artists. And so when we had that conversation, when we're having these conversations, this is part of that conversation is one, creating access for the artists to show their work, opportunities to sell their work. And now that we have grown, we do sponsor events, we do sponsor some artists, and we have bought supplies for artists to create more work, because sometimes just buying a canvas or paints or brushes or whatever the artists need, that may be a barrier for them a barrier for them, and may keep them from creating more artwork that the world, I feel, needs to have. So those were kind of the conversations that we had then are kind of coming back now because of our political and the DEI things that the city of Dallas is going through.
So when you say we supply them with art supplies, you're talking about Artitude
Artitude.
doing that, right? The city of Dallas is not able to necessarily do that, but Artitude fills that gap.
Right.
When you decided to reclaim the term Maricon and center it in your MariconX exhibitions, walk me through how you arrived at that choice to do that. What did it feel like the first time you said it out loud as describing this is our new exhibition, MariconX?
I was alone when I came up with the term. But it was just one of those things I was thinking of, like I wanted to do something for the community I'm a part of, but I wasn't sure like what to call it. So I went online and I was just checking about like, okay, what programming, what organizations are doing. Um, and so the wonderful thing about art, we're so good at reclaiming words, using words that have a negative a connotation for us, pejorative connotation, and we want to reclaim that.
Mm-hmm.
So in this area in Texas, maricon, joto is usually the term that Latinos will hear a lot, which means, it's the F word.
Yeah.
Or faggot. So I wanted to go with more of a kind of a term that more people would recognize. And so I went for maricon. And so when we had our first show, I forget where it was, because our first year we traveled. So we were in
Mm-hmm.
Dallas. This was in Austin. I think it was in Austin. Some of our lesbian artists was like, well, what about us? Because maricon is masculine. And so they wanted to be included in what we were doing. I think you're absolutely right. So at that time, the academics adding the X to, to terms that were more masculine to be more neutral and more inclusive.
Mhm.
So we added the X to maricon to be MariconX, so it is a more inclusive word, and so that it reaches out to more Latinx artists. And so it did, and so that's how we came up with the MariconX, the name for that show.
Other than the response you got from lesbians, what other reactions did you field from the name? Was it controversial or was it welcomed?
It was it was a little. I don't. We never received like unwelcoming verbal or things like that, but we definitely got looks like, oh, they just said maricon, and like, okay, we're like in a public space, because for us it just became a word we use, no longer had that powerful or negative connotation for us. So we could be at dinner at a restaurant talking about, oh yeah, I remember the maricon this, and people will sometimes just look at us like, well, like y'all are some crazy people. But I remember sitting with my friend. She's from Venezuela, and I was in San Antonio, and her parents were there. And this was kind of one of the first conversations I had with someone outside of Artitude,
Hmm.
but in a small conversation. And I told them, "Oh yeah, we're doing this MariconX show," and they were like, "What?" But they listened. They wanted to know what it was about, and they asked questions about, different artists and what we're doing, and it resonated with them, and it resonated as like, like, we do need something like that. That would be amazing, because the machismo culture within sometimes the Latino community, that word is very exhausting. I remember growing up with my uncles and hearing the word joto all the time. They even called me that.
Wow.
Not in the sense that they were like just slamming me down, but maybe they were. I didn't take it that way. But I remember, just my own family calling me that. But now I see it, and it doesn't have that same feeling that I initially understood joto or maricon to be.
Yeah. Sometimes those controversial titles can spark curiosity as much as it can spark outrage. And when the curiosity happens, that's when
Hmm.
the learning happens.
That's exactly right.
How do you adapt the message of MariconX as it travels from Dallas to Austin or Houston or even down to McAllen? Is
So
it the
we
same
adapted
message or do
by
you change it?
the message of MariconX is always the same: to support our Latinx artists, to create opportunities. But the theme may change from year to year. But like this year was El Pueblo Unido, the United People,
Hmm.
and so that resonated with our artists. But we try to focus what we would like the exhibit to show in the art, and then what the artists are thinking. And so we have, with those conversations that we have, and our call for art, that is kind of where we try to lead, to see if the artists can create work or even have work that already resonates with that theme.
You've described Artitude's mission as creating solidarity through artistic expression rather than just individual artist support. How does that collaborative vision show up in practice?
Well, one, not only does it show up in just the programming we have, in sense of we have an art exhibit or we have a performative art, but collaborating with other artists, the voice that they have, the passion that they bring, it all just comes together in a way that is powerful. It's moving, but it's also a safe space. For example, 3 years ago in our Out Loud performance, we had a performer where I knew this performer, and I knew how they identified, so we invited them. But during the performance, as she was speaking, she came out, and she came out as bisexual. She had children, married as well, but she came out as bi. She felt safe enough in that space of almost strangers to let us know that, and that comes to the power of those collaborations coming together, of the different artists coming together, of Artitude creating a space where we can transcend those everyday kind of meets that we have with people, but we can transcend and move to a different level of who we are. That art can move us to that space of understanding and compassion. Um, and so it allows us to be
Who we are.
kind to one another.
And
And
vulnerable.
so,
That's a very
yes,
vulnerable moment to come out like that
right.
in the public space. And the fact that Artitude was able to create a safe space like that for her to do that speaks volumes.
And then from that one experience, the next year, someone was in the audience that was going through that same kind of experience. Bi, children, married. We saw this person in our MariconX show the following year. And she told us, it's like, I got to know y'all because I came to you out loud and I heard this artist speaking and it spoke to me. And now the first artist who came out is now in some way mentoring the other artists through their artwork. So it's just an amazing circle that is just going.
That's beautiful. That sounds very emotional. An unexpected result from that show. Let's switch gear a little bit. So, Artitude announced recently that the Ford Foundation had awarded them $250,000 specifically for creating platforms for LGBTQ and Black artists. How does that change what's possible for Artitude and for what you're doing? That grant.
It has changed a lot. It has changed our not necessarily our mission, but it has changed in how we are producing our programming. One, we've been able to hire an employee, so that increases our capacity to produce various programs. It has, in some way, has freed up my time to now seek out more opportunities for development, community building, but really what it has done, it has enhanced how we look at our programming. For example, we have been able to look at what we have done in the past and have the conversations of this worked, this has not worked, and how can we improve how we are creating these programs. Especially, let's look at MariconX. It's one of our oldest programs, so it doesn't become stale or old, or it's just, oh yeah, Artitude keeps doing the same thing, or we already know what that is about. So it has given us time and has given us opportunity to talk about our relevance in the community and how to continue to be relevant in our community in the programs that we produce and the artists that are part of Artitude. So I think that is what that Ford Foundation money has done for Artitude.
That's
And
awesome.
one, it's given us more opportunity to give back to the artists, and we also have scholarships for students. This year, we're giving up to $10,000 scholarships. These are students, traditional students graduating out of high school, undergrad, but we also have scholarships available for adult learners.
Mm.
And so we closed the scholarship already. We're going to start awarding. But thanks to the Hispanic Chamber and Maricela Martinez, we received another $10,000 funding donation for 2026. So we can continue that scholarship program.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, Artitude's just growing. Want to strip down and connect with a community that celebrates real bodies, real stories, and unforgettable adventures? Check out Go Naked Magazine, a bold, body-positive magazine for gay male nudists. And if you're ready to turn the page and travel, Go Naked Travel curates incredible clothing optional getaways around the world. Think sun, skin, and seriously good vibes. Subscribe today at gonakedmagazine.com and gonakedtravels.com. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges along the way. The last year's state fair had some controversy where some queer artists faced some restrictions. How does that crystallize what Artitude exists to fight against, or does it have an impact?
It did have an impact. So essentially, what that issue was they wanted us to be there, but they didn't want us to identify as an LGBT organization. And so as an LGBT organization, I could not in my conscience be like, sure, we'll do that. But
Yeah.
the one thing that we did do, we have our critics that are out there, but the one thing that we did do, we brought this back to the artists and we told them what was happening. We told them, these are options. We can stay in the show, but they will not recognize us as LGBT or however you want to identify, or we can not be part of the exhibit. And so the artists that were going to exhibit decided not to continue. And that is what we communicated. But our strategy was to continue to have conversations and see if we can continue that conversation and see if we can mold minds, change minds in what we were doing. Many people got involved. Councilman Omar Narvaez, who's no longer with us, turned out, Philippe, the director of the arts and culture, and I know Lisa Dio, who's one of the assistant city managers, had small conversations, and I know some conversations were had at the state fair level on the executive part of that. So we finally did reach an agreement. And so it was satisfactory on both ends. And so we agreed to go back. But unfortunately, this year they were moved because there are certain things happening in the women's museum part. And so the space they have is smaller it couldn't fit our show. And so we won't be at the state fair, not because we didn't want to be there, it's just because of the space. So, and the moving of the Mundo Latino into a different building. I'm not sure what building they're in this year. So,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my
But
follow-up question about what that looks like this next year. Are you looking at an alternative option for a similar display, or are you how are you approaching that?
right now, our goal, we're in the phase right now where we're planning 2026. And I think in some way it was a blessing because now it allows us to really just sit down and think about what we're doing in our 10th year, our anniversary, and how we can engage the community, not only through our programming, but in other ways that we can come out and engage who we are in different ways.
How does running Artitude with Rafik in Buffalo and you're working in Dallas, how does that challenge and surprise you with running Artitude with that partnership across a distance?
It doesn't make it too difficult. Well, at least I don't. There's phone call, there's Zoom. I visited them in Buffalo. They still kind of come down to Dallas. It's really just how just communication and just having those conversations. We treat it in the same way as we've always had. We just have conversations. And if ideas are born from that conversation, that's amazing. If not, it's just a continual circle of just seeing what Artitude can test its boundaries, how Artitude can create a different program and different artists that we can engage with what we do.
I want to switch gears a little bit more and kind of talk about legacy and future aspirations for Artitude. You talked a little bit a few minutes ago about El Pueblo Unido at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center. How did that chapter build on everything that you learned from MariconX, and how does it inform what you're doing next?
So El Pueblo Unido is a rally call that has been used in the past. So we're kind of, how the Romans in humanism look to the past. Now, in this case, we're looking to our past now and how our community has rallied. And so we used El Pueblo Unido because we knew our community would recognize it. And now, but within the call for art, we asked them, like, how is now this, how are you doing in the community? What is happening in your community where you're at? And how can your art now speak of that? So, and that's what we've done with MariconX. We've done that, our past exhibits, and we're going to continue to do that. And so we haven't had a full conversation about what's going to happen with the MariconX next year, but we do know here are conversations that we're having. We have the possibility of being exhibited at NYU this year. there in Pride. We are going back to San Antonio because San Antonio, the community, it is full of wonderful artists, but not quite as organized as we are in somewhat like we are here in Dallas. And I hate to use organized as well, but we offer an opportunity to bring more artists together, to San Antonio. And we are at a gallery that is owned by a wonderful international artist, with the Galeria Eva, with Veronica Castillo, who is a ceramist, but who has worked at the Smithsonian, who is an amazing, amazing person.
Oh, impressive.
So to work with that caliber of artists is inspirational. Is also very humbling because we come in and, with our limited experience, but speaking with her, she's an amazing person, but she also teaches us too. So we're very happy about that. So we've embraced each other in the work that we do.
Interesting. If a young queer artist of color approached you tomorrow saying they wanted to start something like Artitude in their community, what would you tell them is absolutely essential?
Well, first I'll be like, let's sit down and eat and let's talk about this. So because it's happened. I'm not sure if you know Kendrick Dunn with Colorwave.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's a young artist bringing out young creatives, and he's got programming. This is exactly what happened. Now Artitude, we're in a great place where we sponsored his event. And so that's why I like having conversations, because I like to get to like, why are you doing this? Like, what's your inspiration behind this? What are you hoping to accomplish with the program that you're doing? And does it align? If it's with Artitude, does it align with us? And let's see what we can do as an organization to help you accomplish this. If it's something that can happen on the artistic side of Artitude, I still try to be there in terms of giving I guess, advice or my experience on, starting an
Mentorship.
organization and bringing up having different programs. So I do try to do that.
When you look at the landscape of Texas arts and LGBTQ advocacy today versus when you started in 2014, what gives you the most hope for the future?
Is that our artists are still making work. I think that's the most powerful. And this is why I tell artists, keep making work, especially if they're young artists. Not to be discouraged, but to keep creating, because that's what the world needs. This is your voice. This is your look on how you see and view the world, and we need that perspective. And and Artitude, we can show that. We're going to do that.
Do you want Artitude's story to inspire other communities that feel like maybe their voices aren't being heard?
Good question. I'm the type of person that if there is not a place if a place hasn't been put, if the place is not there, or no one has invited me to the table, I figure out a way how to get to that table. And I don't do it in a, run through the door, smashing doors, things like that. I do it through conversations that I have. I do it through my network of people that I have, so that I can get into those conversations, and so that we can have those conversations. Sometimes people like it, sometimes people don't. That is the point of the advocacy, the work that we do, is like, we're okay if you don't like what we do, but we're not okay if you're going to silence our voice because you don't like what we do.
Absolutely. All right. Before we wrap up, it's time for my favorite part of the show, which is a quick fire round of questions that are inspired by the Inside the Actor Studio. 10 famous 10 questions from Inside the Actor Studio, but they've got a queer creative twist. So think of this as a lightning round. They're quick 10 questions. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm not very quick sometimes. So.
What is your favorite artistic medium or tool?
The camera. Photography and the camera.
Same. What artistic trend or cliche do you wish would disappear?
Cliche or trend? I'm trying to think, and right now my mind is just going blank. Um, right now, as a photographer, everyone feels like they're a photographer, and sometimes I
Hmm.
want to say no. So I don't want to do that because there's skill in how we frame, but also there's skill in printing as well.
Yeah, agreed. Print your photography.
Yes.
What fuels your creativity the most?
Mm. I think um, my passion for the work that I do, for thinking about our communities, but in the creative part, my own work, just the beauty that I see in the world, could be in people, could be in things that I see in landscapes. That's what fuels my work, and the colors that I see.
What sound or noise instantly inspires you?
Music. It can be any, it depends on my mood on the music, but I like harmonies that or sounds that blend very nicely together and not a lot of dissonance. So that always tends to inspire me.
What sound or noise completely kills your focus?
Dissonance. It's just like loud. Sometimes we're just really loud. Let me say this: loud, really, really obnoxious, loud noises for me.
Yeah. What's your favorite word or phrase or concept to include in your work?
I just had this conversation with my best friend. I've been saying Jesus Christ in different situations. Could mean something good, could mean something bad, like oh my God, totally gonna do that. But it's not to express anything artistic. It's kind of what's there. But I think when I'm looking artistically, I always kind of tend to use the word of experience or the human experience or an aesthetic experience is kind of where I go to.
If you could see any queer artist, living or dead, honored with a major public monument, who would it be?
For artists, Keith Haring. I love the work,
I
bold,
love his stuff.
simple, bold and simple, but
And impactful at its time.
yes, impactful. I was just a kid when he was doing his work, and I
Hmm.
knew nothing of Keith Haring until I was in college, actually. And so I would love to sit down and pick his brain.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. What is one profession or creative field you could never see yourself in?
Corporate. I did it. Don't want to do it again.
Yeah. If your art could take on a life of its own, what form would it take?
Hmm. I think it would take landscape, more vegetative kind of forms. My work tends to be very soft and in my photographs, the colors can be bold, things like that, but it's kind of um, the unity that I use that I work within my photos is it's very soft. It doesn't have very hard conversations. So within the image itself.
And finally, 100 years from now, what do you hope your art says about you to those who find it in the future?
That I lived my life to the best that I could with the experiences and the people that I grew around in uplift and how I try to uplift our communities.
Well, I am very grateful that you do the work that you do to uplift our communities. I think it's powerful and it's important. And I thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Well, thank you. And it's always a pleasure seeing and talking to you.